right, tonight, before we explain the allegations against Judge Roy Moore and Louis C.K., I want to be crystal clear. And I said this repeatedly on my radio show today, but people on the left are trying to take out of context. When I spoke about this for nearly 2 hours today, Geraldo was one of my witnesses. If what people are accused of is true, it is beyond reprehensible, beyond disgusting, beyond shameful. And in the case of Judge Moore, if it's true, he should step aside and leave the Senate race. Everyone would agree. Everybody. A 32-year-old man pursuing a 14-year-old girl is disgusting. That is something we should all agree on. This should transcend politics. However, everyone also has the right to defend their name. Our goal on this show is always to find the truth. Here are the allegations tonight. A woman is alleging to the Washington Post that back in 1979, when she was 14 years old, she had a sexual encounter, actually 2 of them, with then 32-year-old Roy Moore. On one occasion, the woman alleges that Moore kissed her. And during another, she says that Moore allegedly, inappropriately touched her and guided her hand to touch him. Now, although she claimed no other sexual conduct took place, she described the incident to the Washington Post by stating, quote, "Well, I wanted it over with. I wanted out. Just get this over with. Whatever this is, just get it over." Now, the woman then says that she asked Moore to take her home, which he did. 3 other women are also accusing Moore of sexual misconduct back to the 1970s while they were teenagers, ranging in age from 16 to 18 years old. The women are alleging that Moore pursued romantic relationships with them, and one allegation involved kissing. Judge Moore tonight is adamantly denying these allegations against him. He told the Washington Post, quote, "These allegations are completely false, and they are a desperate political attack by the National Democratic Party and the Washington Post on this campaign." In a separate statement, Moore said the Washington Post has already endorsed the judge's opponent, and for months they have engaged in a systematic campaign to distort the truth about the judge's record and career and derail his campaign. In fact, just 2 days ago, the Foundation for Moral Law sent a retraction demand to the Post for the false stories they wrote about the judge's work and compensation. But apparently there is no end to what the Post will allege, and continues. This garbage is the very definition of fake news and intentional defamation. Tonight, Judge Moore also tweeted, "The Obama, Clinton machines, liberal media lapdogs just launched the most vicious and nasty round of attacks against me I have ever faced. We are in the midst of a spiritual battle with those who want to silence our message. The forces of evil will lie, cheat, steal, even inflict physical harm if they believe it will silence and shut up Christians, conservatives like you and me." Now, I believe you and I have a duty to stand up and fight back against the forces of evil, waging an all-out war on our conservative values. Our nation is at a crossroads right now, both spiritually and politically. Our children and grandchildren's futures are on the line, so rest assured, I will never give up the fight. Now, these are very serious allegations. Of course, they have to be investigated to the fullest extent. And we're finding out almost every single day now, sexual misconduct, sexual abuse. It's a widespread problem in this country. It is morally repugnant. It has no place in our society. Here's the thing. In any of these cases, it is sometimes you have to look at the truth here. How do we ascertain what happened 38 years ago? I'm a father of a daughter. I'm a brother to sisters. It's scary when you hear about these predators. And with these allegations against Judge Moore, this happened nearly 38 years ago. And at the same time, and this is a very delicate question, but we have to bring it up. Do some women wait because they are too scared, too upset, too traumatized to come forward? As I said on my radio show today, of course they're afraid. I can understand that. We can all understand why no one would want to come forward and speak about such trauma. On the other hand, we have to pursue truth, which at times can be very difficult. It's like threading a needle. It's a razor's edge. If, in this case, let's say, the allegations turned out to be not true, where would Judge Moore go to get his good name back before an election, I believe, on December 12th? The bottom line is this should be a nonpartisan issue. We should all be for civil rights, and we should be for a civil society. Petty politics should be put aside. I want to give you a quick history lesson, and I learned something very profound early in my career. I was a local radio host back in Atlanta, Georgia. And remember Richard Jewell? First they thought he was the hero. And then I was on the radio the morning that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution said that Richard Jewell who we thought was a hero, fit the profile of the lone bomber in the 1996 Olympics case because Jewell lived with his mother. I didn't know it at the time. Richard Jewell was actually listening to my radio show when I said, wait a minute, just because he lives with his mother doesn't mean he's a bomber. And I said it on the air at the time, that just because you live with your mother doesn't make you a bomber. Many people, though, were quick to rush to judgment. Back in 1997, I had the chance to interview Jewell. I didn't know he was listening to my radio show at the time when we did Hannity and Combs. And he said at the time that the reason he gave me one of the first interviews is because I was the only one in the media that didn't rush to judgment. Incredible lesson. Watch this. Richard Jewell, 33, a former law enforcement officer, fits the profile of the lone bomber. This profile generally includes a frustrated white man who is a former police officer, a member of the military or police wannabe who seeks to become a hero. You see that in the newspaper. What do you think?
Well, you know, it wasn't me. You know, I'd like to know where they got their profile from. Well, you know, several parts of that, you know, police wannabe. In the state of Georgia, I am a certified peace officer. I'm just not currently working for a police department. This case in my life in 1996, it changed my life because it made me realize you cannot rush to judgment. Let's look at examples where many of my so-called colleagues in the media and other people rush to judgment. Look at the Duke lacrosse case, for example. I didn't rush to judgment. College students had their lives ruined when they were, it turns out, falsely accused of rape. Everyone in the media, everyone on the left, they rushed to judgment. They were convicting these kids before the truth ever came out. No benefit of the reasonable doubt, no presumption of innocence. And in fact, a group of 88 Duke professors without any evidence signed their names to a paid advertisement in a Duke school newspaper that read, quote, regardless of the results of the police investigation, what is apparent every day now is the anger and fear of many students who know themselves to be objects of racism and sexism, who see illuminated in this moment's extraordinary spotlight what they live with every day. That was a rush to judgment. And I said it was at the time. Almost everybody smeared and slandered those three Duke lacrosse players, wanted to throw them in jail. It turned out they didn't do it. How many times on this show have you heard me condemn former President Obama that he rushed to judgment in high-profile race cases, all while ignoring massive amounts of violence in his adopted hometown of Chicago? You may remember this.
The Cambridge police acted stupidly. There is a long history in this country of African Americans and Latinos being stopped by law enforcement disproportionately. And that's just a fact. The African American community is also knowledgeable that there is a history of racial disparities in the application of our criminal laws. There's a big chunk of our fellow citizenry that feels as if because of the color of their skin, they are not being treated the same.
The president, a lawyer, from that position, rushed to judgment every single time. And as I pointed out many times in this show, was completely wrong every time. Hands up, don't shoot, turned out to be a lie. Some still regurgitate that lie today. George Zimmerman was found innocent in the Trayvon Martin case by a jury of his peers. And all of the cops in the Freddie Gray case were acquitted. I was right on all these cases. In other words, one of the reasons I have been right in so many of my bratty friends in the media that are overpaid and lazy, like fake Jake Tapper, is they rush to judgment. I don't. Jake, listen to the whole 2 hours of my radio show today. It's one of the reasons we have been more right than wrong. We're not always right, and when we're wrong, we'll tell you. We here, right on this program, we didn't say hands up, don't shoot. We waited. We were right on Freddie Gray. We were right on the Cambridge police. Every single person in this country deserves the presumption of innocence with the allegations against Judge Moore. None of us know the truth of what happened 38 years ago. The only people that would know that are the people involved in this incident. Here's another perfect example. Now, when it came, some will say, well, Hannity, when it came to Bill Clinton's sexual misconduct, well, on the one hand, Democrats didn't care. He had the right politics. Hillary called it a vast right-wing conspiracy, never called out her husband. Unlike the left, I actually worked, reported, did my research, and I went and interviewed all of these women and I looked them in the eyes and interviewed them, let them share their stories. I did my job. They should do theirs in the media.
You described a scene where he was biting on your lip, and then when it was all over, he was leaving. Said, you better put some ice on that.
Yeah, and casually put on his sunglasses and walked out the door.
It was a terrible ordeal for me, and no woman should be subjected to it. But it was an assault.
He assaulted you?
Yes.
He touched, grabbed, fondled, and kissed you against your will?
Yes.
And it's an allegation that is not made by one woman, it's made by multiple
Many
women.
of us.
I said, well, I may need to be going or something. And next thing you know, he sat down, pulled down his pants, his whole everything, and he was exposed. And I said, I'm not that kind of girl, and I need to be getting back to my desk.
In many of these cases, Democrats, for politics, political reasons, said these women should not be believed. I don't think they ever interviewed them. You might remember James Carville saying, well, you drag a $100 bill through a trailer park in the case of Paula Jones. And look how they treated Monica Lewinsky. That became beyond shameful. And we can't forget the Clinton Foundation. Really? Democrats care so much? On this show, we have been the most outspoken about Hillary taking millions and millions of dollars from countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, the UAE, Brunei, Oman, and they have the most horrendous human rights record in terms of how they abuse women, how they kill gays and lesbians just for being who they are, and Christians and Jews. I don't remember anyone else in the media talking about it. In other words, nobody should be pointing fingers and passing judgment. We've got to know the truth. This is an issue that transcends geography, culture, political ideology. Now, sadly, sexual misconduct in America is rampant. That's the truth. Just look at what's happening in Hollywood today. Actor Ben Affleck, he was forced to apologize for grabbing a woman's breast on live television. Dustin Hoffman also apologized after two women accused him of sexual misconduct. They admitted it. Kevin Spacey, accused of sexually abusing multiple young teen boys. He's now in rehab. Famed director, remember Roman Polanski? Pled guilty to raping a 13-year-old girl after he gave her Quaaludes and booze, and was quoted as saying, quote, afterwards, oh, she's a double victim. He has still escaped from justice. My victim and a victim of the press. And, of course, we all know now about the allegations swirling around Harvey Weinstein, who also checked himself into rehab. And now even comedian Louis C.K., he's been accused tonight of committing multiple acts of lewd conduct by the New York Times. I can't stand Louis C.K., but does he deserve the presumption of innocence? Every American does. We reached out to him tonight for comment. They want to come on the show. The accusers of Judge Moore want to come on the show. They're all welcome here. This brings us back to Roy Moore, Judge Moore. Any accusation of sexual misconduct is beyond deeply disturbing. I say that as a father, as a brother. But every person in this country deserves the right, the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. We should have learned a lot from Duke, and a lot from Ferguson, and a lot from what happened down in Florida with Trayvon Martin. And we should have learned a lot with the Cambridge police. Should have learned a lot of people. However, some members of Congress, they seem to have forgotten this basic right, including even John McCain. He tweeted, quote, the allegations against Roy Moore are deeply disturbing and disqualifying. The allegations? He should immediately step aside and allow the people of Alabama to elect a candidate they can be proud of. What happened, Senator, to the presumption of innocence? Maybe one thing, what if somebody came out tomorrow, Senator McCain, and said something about you that was false? We don't know. We have to stand up against predatory behavior. But as I said, these are complicated issues, more complicated. And I would just ask every American, learn the lesson that I learned in Atlanta. Learn the lesson that I have now applied to all these cases and why I turn out more often right than wrong than my media friends who always rush to judgment. You're going to make a decision. You can go interview all these people and then make another decision, but base it on your own experience, your fact, your believability, the people you talk to, like I did when I interviewed Juanita Broderick and Kathleen Willey and Paula Jones and many of the other women that accused Bill Clinton.